Hi, I'm Jeff. This is Tropical Plants at 53 degrees north. Now today we're going to talk about my Dipladenia or my Mandevilla sanderi. The old name is Dipladenia, but many people still call them Dipladenia. The problem is that I'm getting lots of yellow leaves on it, lots of dying leaves. And it's always been my pride and joy this past few years. So I want to have a little discussion about what might be causing it and whether we can come up with a solution. And by the way, you can see in the background there, that fabulous red bloom there is my Hippeastrum tree Chic. Isn't it gorgeous? So let's jump in. And we are in. Okay, so the problem we're trying to solve here is yellowing leaves on Mandevilla plants, or Dipladenia as it's known in many places. So the first thing to look at is the leaves and the problem. So there is what's going on. This is the kind of thing that's going on. You can see the leaves are beginning to turn yellow and then eventually they drop off. Now you can't see lots of yellow leaves on my plant because I've pulled them off. I'm pulling them off on a daily basis. But suffice it to say that my plant is getting a lot more yellow leaves than it normally does. So I'll just give you like a geography of the plant first of all. I know if you're a subscriber to the channel, you've probably seen this before, but if you're new, then it's going to be relevant to what we're going to discuss. So start off with the pot down there. The plant was about this big when I first bought it. I've had it a few years now. It goes up towards the trellis here. It travels along the trellis in this direction, finishing up there, and then we go back in the other direction and it goes up, 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 up into the eaves of the greenhouse and up to the top over there. And it had started moving along down there towards the end of last summer until winter came and stopped it all. So as you can see, the red blooms are not an issue. It's blooming perfectly well at this time of year. We're in early May now. There's not a problem with that. The new vining growth has stopped completely and I'm getting an increase in the number of these yellow leaves. So what's going on? Well, I think I know the problem because I've had it before. It's one of those things that you learn, you forget, and then you've got to relearn. The problem is there are many things that can cause yellowing leaves on a Mandevilla, and I think what we should do really is go through some of its cultural requirements, discuss that, because if we don't get those right, then we're not really giving the full picture as to what might cause yellowing leaves. I think there is one particular problem which more often than not is the main issue for yellowing leaves on a Mandevilla. So I'm going to go through some of the different cultural requirements, all of which if you get wrong will produce yellow leaves, dying leaves. However, there is one specific thing which I think is my problem and probably the problem for many of you as well. So we'll go back to the pot and we'll just have a little discussion about some of the care requirements for this plant. So the Mandevilla is a tropical vine and it grows in Central and South America. It comes from tropical woodlands and it climbs up other plants and it becomes a very large woody climber. I believe it can go up to 7 metres tall. Mine at the moment is about 3 or 4 metres, but obviously it's not very thick. It's not very thick and woody at the moment because it's still in a very small pot. And that could be part of the problem. I don't think it's my main problem, but I think it's one of the issues. So the first thing to say is that because it's evergreen, the leaves die naturally anyway. So when you come to late winter and springtime, if you're in a temperate climate like me, even though I have the temperature in here at 18 degrees Celsius and I have grow lights as well, it's not really the same as the sun coming through the window. It's not getting that same intensity of light. So it does naturally begin to drop some leaves. So that's one of the things. Don't panic if yours is only doing it a little bit and everything else seems fine with it. It has growing tips, it has blooms. Then it's not likely that there's anything major wrong with it. It's just doing its natural thing and dropping the odd leaf because that's what happens. Because I've had mine a few years, I know that that's not the problem here because I'm getting too many leaves turning yellow and dropping off. So I've already alluded to the temperatures. It likes to stay over 18 degrees Celsius. There are many species and many hybrids of this plant, so you will find that some of them will go down quite low. I have heard of one that will go down to 5 degrees Celsius. This particular one doesn't really like to be below 15. I've got a couple of cuttings in the other side of the greenhouse which do struggle when they get down to 12 degrees Celsius. In fact, I even lost one of those this year, but the other two are doing fine. But they're not vining because they just don't really like the temperatures so low, and it really sets them back when it comes into like the main growth period, which is obviously now. So as far as light goes, they want lots and lots of light, maximum light, but obviously they don't want to be behind the direct sun. They're perfectly fine with the amount of light that they're getting here. Otherwise, obviously, I wouldn't have all this growth. You could probably tell from the pot that I have been feeding it. I've put some feed pellets, fertiliser pellets in the pot there, so that isn't a problem. General purpose fertiliser, completely fine. They don't need any special mix of fertiliser. So let's talk about the media. Now, the media that they like is like a general purpose compost, something like a John Innes number 2 or number 3, but crucially, they like some kind of sharp drainage, so something like sharp sand or grit to be added into that mix. Now, I haven't done that. When I potted this up, all I had at hand was general purpose compost. Now, why is that a problem? Well, over time, as the root ball gets bigger and bigger and it produces more roots, then the amount of aeration in that pot reduces, and therefore the drainage reduces. This is just a natural process of a really vigorous plant. Which leads me into what I think is highly probably the problem with this Mandevilla plant. The watering, and therefore the water retention within the pot, isn't optimal. So if you just look at the pot as it is now, it looks very dry on top and it feels very dry on top. But when I get this moisture meter and pop it in, I'll just make sure you can see it there. It says dry to start off with. I'll just shove it down, which is always a tricky thing to do when it's got so many roots. And you can see it's gone straight across to wet. Okay, I don't know if you can see that there. It's focusing on this Phalaenopsis. I'll just move that out of the way so I can see it. Okay, so dry on top, but very, very wet underneath. So that's telling me a few things. The first thing that pops to mind is that I'm overwatering it. I'm giving it too much water. So let's just pick that apart a little bit. So where it lives in the wild, can it get too much water? Do mandevillas throughout Central and South America die off in huge swathes when it rains too much during that month? Well, no, of course they don't. If we look at it in a slightly different way, I've raised the pot up, so that tells me that it's not going to be sitting in water. They don't like wet feet. They like to dry out. I've raised it up, so that's not happening. So why is this pot not drying out? I haven't watered it for several days, and up until actually checking this, at this point I would have watered it. Well, it's something that we were discussing just a minute ago. It's highly likely that the root ball in that pot is so dense now that it's just not allowing that water to pass through it. So something needs to happen with this pot. I'm going to have a look at that. Now, obviously, I can't take the pot off and completely wash all the roots off. That's going to set it back way too much. But what I can do, and it's not going to be easy with all this top growth, what I can do is I can take that pot off, I can mix up some multi-purpose compost along with some grit or sharp sand, and I can repot it up into the next size up and make sure that there's plenty of drainage at the bottom so that I don't get this situation again where it's dry on top and it's very, very wet underneath. So that, for me anyway, I think is likely to be the problem for these yellowing leaves. And I think in many cases that's the problem for other people too. Of course, the converse is true, that if you don't give it enough water and the whole thing remains dry for days and days and days on end, then you'll still also get yellowing leaves. So it's something that's worth investigating with a moisture meter like I've done there. But if you look at mine, the blooms are absolutely fine. They're looking really nice. I've no problem there. I've got lots and lots of buds on it. So I think it's something that I can remedy, and hopefully we'll know pretty quickly whether that was the problem. Okay, so for now, until I get to actually change that pot, I can use the moisture meter and make sure that I'm not giving it even more water when clearly at the bottom of that pot it's still very, very wet. Okay, so I hope that solves some people's problem at least, and if it doesn't, then obviously you've got some other issue. And of course there's pests as well. We didn't mention pests. You can get mealybug on them, you can get spider mite on them, and I believe there are 1 or 2 pathogens as well which can cause issues. But for the most part, if you're having problems with yellowing leaves, it's highly likely to be the watering, or, as I said before, look at it slightly differently, it's the conditions of the pot the media, how you're actually dealing with that, which then has the knock-on effect of leading the water to be the problem. Okay, so you change something else and the water won't become a problem. What I would also say is if you're keeping it in a greenhouse, if you can put it in a border, then that's even better. If you can actually plant it in the border, because again, you're not going to get these same issues. These are issues of plants being in small pots. They even recommend if you grow it in a greenhouse that you do it in like a big trough if you can get away with it, because we've got all that growth, it's very vigorous, it doesn't really want to be in a little pot for very long. Certainly if you've got the growth to be supported by that little pot. Okay, I hope that was useful. If you found that useful, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps to grow the channel. I really like to hear from people in the comments. Tell me your experiences. Tell me any of your problems, providing it's about Mandevilla. Ask me any questions if you like. And for now, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.